Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 7th of October 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Nick are here in the studio in Plymouth on what was a treacherous night last night. It woke me up.
Horrible gales again, and we've just had an incredible downpour here in Plymouth. I think it's much the same across the rest of the country. So we'll just leave the weather today and move on to, well, I was going to say happier things, but of course we're talking politics in UK. We're going to give straight off a mention to Robert Green, still under house arrest, still required to report to the police every day. And what is his crime? Well, he's been trying to expose high-level establishment paedophiles in Scotland, and he's been trying to protect children. And we'd just like to thank one of our viewers who sent in this letter. We've mentioned this MP before, Jonathan Lord. And basically, he's been informed about the Holly Gregg abuse case. And initially, he came back with the usual nonsense, the deflection, well, I can't get involved in anybody else's case. So you talk to MPs about the abuse of children, and all they say is, oh dear, I can't touch that. So the person put a bit more pressure on him. And then he said that he does understand the horrific nature of the allegations. There's the great word, the allegations. But he's going to follow the case. He's going to follow it. So he'll be presumably following it, you know, be watching EastEnders 1 minute, and then he'll be switching across to
the UK
follow what's happening with the abuse of children, not actually do anything about it. And the constituent got a bit upset with this facile response from this gentleman. And his reply was, oh, well, you're being nasty and rude, so I'm not going to speak to you again. So Mr. Lord, unfortunate surname for this gentleman, but he's clearly not interested in the institutional abuse of children in UK. No point talking about crime to him because he can't get involved.
Yeah.
Whereas the National Crime Agency, of course, has been busy.
Very busy. Keith Bristow, who is Director General of the NCA, spoke to The Guardian saying new powers were needed to monitor data, emails and phone calls. He said it was necessary to gain public support for them, and that the public should be losing freedoms to gain safety and security. He warned that the biggest threats to public safety were via the internet and that police are struggling to keep up. He then went on to say law enforcement organisations that were investigating paedophiles and drug and human traffickers were now operating in the digital world and needed the ability to prove communication took place between the identified persons at a particular time and place. He then went on to say that it was all about public safety and the powers were needed to keep the public safe. So a bit more fear-mongering going on by Mr. Bristow.
In order to slide in yet more protections.
Yeah, more to lose more of their freedoms.
And I'm told that Ian Crane sort of dealt with this by saying if you put the statistics side by side as to who is killed in car accidents, who dies in the NHS system, who dies in police custody, if you put those sort of statistics next to how many people are actually dying in Western countries as a result of terrorist attack, you are down into 10 versus hundreds of thousands in the other example. But this is it, playing on people's fear. In order for these people to keep us safe, they need to know even more about us. And of course, that's the danger. And we just should give The Guardian the little hypocrisy prize, of course, because it's the Scott Trust, which has been funding the Media Standards Trust, which is the very organisation supported by Common Purpose that has actually been calling for greater state control of the press and media in UK. So if you want to spend your money on a duplicitous little newspaper, best go for The Guardian. Or you could go for Russia Today.
Could do. OK, so now here comes, following that story, now here comes another fear aspect of the story. Your children could be tracked by sexual predators using GPS. The ex-head of intelligence services now spoken, Sir John Scarlett.
Sorry, is that a picture of the head of the intelligence service? The one in blue looks as though
he'd probably do a better job.
I think this is part of the Cobra team. I think these are the people actually working to keep us safe. In fact,
I think we'd be in safer hands.
I would trust these youngsters a lot more than I would
as well.
David.
I would.
It could be a young David Cameron. I don't know.
No, poor
much
child.
too nice.
Don't do that to him. Okay, but the head of the ex-head of intelligence services, Sir John Scarlett, has come out and said parents should be more vigilant with children's use of smart technology. But then continue down the article. He then goes on and criticising the public who have privacy concerns and say that we should forget about our privacy and what a danger the internet is, and we should give all our powers away to keep our children safe.
I think I'm right in saying it was the previous head of MI6 that was photographed looking pretty white and flabby in his swimming trunks on the beach because his wife had been silly enough to put his personal details out on Facebook, but those got taken down pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Sorry, the details on Facebook,
yeah.
not the swimming trunks. Otherwise, that would have been a Brooks Newmark, of course.
Yes.
Well, more serious things going on
Really serious
at the moment.
things. I have tried to get in touch with Chris Bivvy this morning, but I have been unable to reach him as of yet. I got a message last night that Chris Bivvy had been arrested. Can we put the slide up? This was the post that went up last night. This is a quick message to all to let you know Chris, within the last hour, has been arrested. Reports from home say the police asked to come in, but they didn't have a warrant, so Chris refused. They then went on about breaking in the front door, back windows to get into him. Unfortunately, they got him and they took him away in handcuffs. That's all I heard. So then this morning at around 1 o'clock, this post was put up. Chris Bivvy, again, part 2. He was then actually released. And if we can just take a little look here, this is the damage that they'd done to his home. And if we can get the other one up. So they've broken the window and then they've smashed in the front door, and here's part of the his plaster coming off the door. They came in under the PACE, which is the police. If we can put the next slide up, Brian. Here we go. The Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984, where they have a right to break into his home. They wanted him to come in to have a chat with him. He refused, obviously. So then off they came. They entered his home and arrested him. But this is what they arrested him under, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984. As of yet, we don't know if there have been any charges. Just the remains there. Yeah. We don't as yet know if there are any charges made against him or what they wanted to talk to Chris about. But Chris is actually supposed to be on mine and Danielle's new show, No Holds Barred, on Thursday night. So if we hear of anything more, I will let you know, and I'm sure Chris will be spilling the beans on Thursday night with us.
So we're getting a really interesting society now in UK, is that the police simply decide what they want you for. They then come and kick in your front door.
Without a warrant.
Without a warrant. They're going to take you or they're going to take your children. So no theory about this. You can see the damage for yourself. And we're nearly in a state of lawlessness in this country, getting very serious. And it's going to take a lot of people to stand up to be counted to put a stop to it.
Exactly.
Where's it coming from? Well, we get clues. And well done, Christopher Booker from The Telegraph, because he's come up with this particular article where he is really going for a family judge who he said ignored the law over a 9-year-old girl. And the key point is that children have a right to express their wishes directly into family courts. But this has not been happening. And this particular story is about yet another case where the judge did not allow the child to have access to the court. So here's Booker. He's saying he reported on the bizarre ruling by Mrs. Justice Willis Croft in Derby that a young girl, 9, should be taken from the home she happily shared with her loving mother to live in a small one-bedroom flat with a long-absent father, a former drug addict with a criminal record. So the little girl then runs away back to her mother, and eventually she is put back with her mother. So Booker's point is, why do so many judges seem to think it's their right to disobey the law of the land? Well, Booker, of course, is missing something here because, of course, the judges operating in a secret court with no jury is in breach of common law in the land. So we've got a star chamber being used to take children away from their families. And the fact that in those star chambers, judges then strip away the rights of children to be heard is not something that Booker's that Booker is actually covering. Nevertheless, he's pointing out that we've got judges breaking the law inside Star Chambers. And that reminds us of this one. So thank you to one of our viewers who reminded us the other day that, of course, Theresa May was accused of unacceptable and regrettable behaviour by a judge. Just think of that title. Let's look at what was really going on. She was the second Home Secretary in history to be found guilty of contempt of court. So it was nothing to do with unacceptable and regrettable behaviour. This was contempt of court. And this was part of it. She ignored a legal agreement to release an Algerian robber from immigration detention in a decision that lawyers say risked throwing the whole system into confusion. She wouldn't back down. And in the end, the law firm said, well, unless something happens, we're going to go for contempt of court. And that was exactly what it was. So here we have the clear case that the Home Secretary broke the law, contempt of court, but note the wording again in the Telegraph, she escaped sanctions, which could have included a fine or even imprisonment. So families do something wrong in court and they're admonished pretty quickly. People are sent down for a short time in prison for contempt of court. But if you're Theresa May, Home Secretary, well, you just flout the law and then you don't get any sanctions. So she's above the law. She's broken the law. If you've broken the law, you must be a criminal.
Yeah, well, we're going to be more on people who are above the law in a moment. But absolutely right. You've got Melanie in prison exposing the shocking things that went on at Beechwood, thrown into prison, and then we have Theresa May walking out and getting away with it.
Right. So we basically...
We called them, didn't we?
Well,
the Home Office
we've got
today.
The criminals running the system at the moment.
Totally.
So we're now beginning to see the problem really clearly. So let's remind ourselves of what Theresa May has been up to in the last few days. She's vowed to get tough on extremists. She's going to bring in the ban and restrict fanatics who spread hate but cannot be prosecuted as they have not broken the law. But when she breaks the law, she doesn't get prosecuted anyway. So what we're seeing is a complete breakdown of justice here. This was part of the original wording. Breach of the order will be a criminal offence. On it goes. So the Home Secretary running basically law and order in the country, she's been identified as breaking the law, a criminal, but she's sitting in judgment of other people.
Yeah. And they didn't know anything about it, did they, when you phoned the Home Office? They had no idea.
Well, this was to do with this one, actually, which is the banker.
But no, you asked about Theresa May and they didn't know anything about it.
You're right. We saw this headline. Well, in fact, Nick found this one. Banker admits LIBOR fraud conspiracy. So the BBC proudly saying a senior banker from a UK bank has admitted conspiring to defraud over manipulating the LIBOR lending rate. Now, this wasn't a fiver, of course. This defrauded millions and millions of people, effectively billions of pounds. But the banker can't be named for legal reasons. But he's the first person in the UK to plead guilty to the offence, and he has submitted the plea on Friday. Now, we decided to follow through on this. We spoke to the Home Office initially. They said they didn't know anything about this case. I said I was surprised because obviously this is a major fraud. And in the end, I asked their media team whether they knew anything about Theresa May breaking the law, and they got a little bit wobbly. But they pushed me across to the Serious Fraud Office, and it's the Serious Fraud Office that is reporting that the banker has been protected by a court order, and UK column understands this is to protect others in linked trials. So if you want to be suspicious, we might have a senior banker whose name is being withheld from the public. If you want to be a bit of an optimist, you can say, well, actually, this name isn't being released in order that they can push through court cases against others involved in the LIBOR scam.
Well, it's just the same as the reports on Beechwood closed for 75 years to protect the victims.
Yeah.
I bet if you ask the majority of the victims, do they want those reports released to the public, I'm 99% sure that they would want that report made public and to be
absolutely.
naming those people. So it's in a way, it's similar. It's a similar saying, keep it for his benefit. Well, no.
Agree. If you want to have a look in a bit more detail yourself, you can go to the Serious Fraud Office site, and here they are reporting on this case themselves, and they've got some detail underneath. And you can also find a phone number. You can phone their media team and see what they're up to. I just remind people that they are an independent government department that apparently is going to bring the International Criminal Banking Fraternity to book. So we'll watch with interest on that.
Indeed, we will.
And on the subject of vast amounts of money, we were interested to receive this, which is the start of dialogue in America where people are beginning to look at Mr. George Soros, the man who can manipulate billions, trillions of dollars, make money from crashing whole currencies. But what this text is picking up is that, of course, it's George Soros who is funding many of the social media networks, and he's also creating websites which are driving social, political and economic policy. So we have one of the banking fraternity who is sitting in the background using obscene wealth in order to skew political agenda in countries. And of course that doesn't mean to say third world countries, because his assets are at work in Britain to induce the sort of policy that George Soros thinks that we should be living under. But we'll allow you to dig into that a bit more.
I found an article actually just in relation to Soros that Nick sent to me earlier. Apparently Soros was funding Ebola, the Ebola patent, and the leading doctor on Ebola apparently was on the missing MH370 flight.
We think.
I'm going to do some more investigation, but it kind of makes sense, wouldn't it?
It's just a coincidence. So anybody can help us out with that, please do. And that reminds me, we did get picked up the other day in that when we put out a report that a gentleman had won a case against the BBC over Building 7, we were told that it wasn't quite as clear cut that he'd won the case. So one of our viewers got pretty upset about that. We would say we do our best. If you think that we've reported something which isn't quite correct, perhaps you would give us the true story, and then we can push it out. That will be very helpful. So let's just come back to Theresa May, because I just had a little look on the Home Office website, and I was intrigued to see this charming picture of the two girls. And I thought we'd just bring in a little bit of a caption on this. So here she is, Theresa, broken the law, but she's having fun with her friend. And you can just read the smile. Who cares about child abuse or banking fraud or paedophilia in Westminster? They're just two girls having fun. I think they're going to sign the book, and then they're going to go off for a little glass of sparkling wine
and
together.
a bit shopping.
She'll be wearing a leopard skin shoes or something.
Something else.
There we are. This is the reality of British politics. The harsh reality is that these women and men, of course, in Westminster allow this to happen. So today is Melanie Shaw's birthday. Melanie is still stuck in HM Prison Peterborough. She said a big thank you this morning to all of you who've sent her birthday cards. She was unbelievably touched, very emotional. She said she had never had so many birthday cards. And the prison's present to Melanie was to raid her cell earlier this morning in a surprise search. And so Melanie said, I just put all my birthday cards up and the guards came in and completely trashed my cell.
I did.
A little bit later, she was pushed down the stairs and she sustained some slight injuries
to her elbow.
To her elbow for that. Of course, she won't be seen by a doctor because Sodexo doesn't have an on-site doctor. There's a contract for those services. And we can confirm that Melanie Shaw is having to use dishcloths, J-cloths as bandages for her leg ulcer. So this is how Britain under David Cameron treats child abuse victims. And I'm just going to remind people again that it isn't a system that does this, it's real people. Theresa May and the Crown Prosecution Service, Alison Saunders, absolutely responsible for the fact that this very vulnerable lady remains in prison, no evidence against her, and she's got to wait till
on remand.
She's got to wait till the 27th of this month.
Shocking.
And we get another clue as to what's going on here, because Martin sent us an email in which he said he'd posted a comment on the Guardian article about widespread sexual abuse in Rotherham had caused outrage but little action. So at 4:23, it's actually yesterday, he highlighted Melanie Shaw's situation, and then he noticed that it was removed by 16:45. So according to this gentleman, The Guardian is now censoring its own media, its own website, in order to take down anybody who's daring to post information about Melanie Shaw. What a horrible newspaper The Guardian is. It pretends to be squeaky clean, intellectual, but behind the scenes, just as dirty as all the rest.
Can I just say, the people in the chat room are loving the Theresa May pictures. We'll keep them coming.
Really?
Yeah, they're loving them. Especially Anthony.
I always say, if you want a little bit of a surprise, just Google the name Theresa May in Google Images. It's best you're over 18. Well, is it her? I don't know. Could be. They look similar.
Can we go with this?
We should. Free Melanie Shaw.
Can you put me back on?
There we are.
There you go. T-shirts still available. I think there's one extra large. Carol's going to kill me. She only told me a minute ago.
So there's
large and small left available. So there's only a few left. So if you want a free Melanie T-shirt, carol@ukcolumn.org.
Well, over to you, because this man has still not been dealt with.
Okay, yes. So
his legacy, has not been dealt with.
No, so if people cast their minds back to May 2013 and the UK Column event at the Tabernacle in London, where Ben Fellows got on the stage and spoke out and played a recording of police telling him that a certain minister was above the law and could not be arrested. Well, a year and a half later, and a journalist has spoken out about another 12 figures whose name he passed to you, true investigators. But sadly, these people remain untouchable because they are so powerful, apparently. And this has also been picked up by the Express. I do believe that there are another 12, but they're untouchable. They're not so much celebrities, but high-ranking police, politician and judiciary.
So we can say that the law at the moment is biased. It's acting against celebrities. It's acting against people who were involved in crime many years ago, and it's doing that in order to protect people who are still within the serving political establishment in Britain.
Exactly.
Here's another case of, let's go back in time in order to try and sweep all of the stuff under the carpet. So a retired priest here, Canon Mortimer Stanley, I think he's 82 years old, but they're talking about bringing him back into UK from Ireland as a result of crimes that were carried out between 1977 and 2002. We've got people like this who the state seems to be able to tackle. They can find the assets to get out on the ground. But the moment somebody is mentioned in the establishment or Westminster, high levels of the police, etc., then massive close down and, oh dear, there's not going to be any investigation. So we're governed by criminals and paedophiles. The country is not going to improve until we get decent people into Westminster. And, of course, they love a war.
Oh, don't they just? OK, so news today that the ISIS flag has been raised in Syrian town Kobani, which apparently is just 14 miles away from the Turkish border. And at the Turkish border, apparently 14 army tanks have taken up position. Now, what interests me is, one, can we confirm that the ISIS have put that flag up? Number two is Turkey were very reluctant to get involved with us. But I've got something very interesting, which I'm just going to get and read for you. This has come from a gentleman, one of the town councillors, I suppose you could call him, from this Kobani. His name is Idris Nassan, and he says, when I talk to people here in Kobani, they thank the international community and the United States. They thank the countries who are striking at the ISIS, but everyone believes it is not enough. British airstrikes so far have been limited to Iraq, but the military have carried out attacks on IS targets in Syria. And this Mr. Nassan went on and told The Guardian, airstrikes alone are really not enough to defeat ISIS in Kobani. So question is, does Mr. Nassan work for the American or British government? How much was he paid to make that statement to the press with regards, and how quickly are they going to get ground troops in on Syria?
Somebody quite young, Louise, you're remarkably cynical.
Sorry. Yes.
I mean,
I've been here too long, that's why.
Possibly be working for the media, I don't know. Let's come in a different direction, same subject. But here's the Mail with great glee, as we told some of our local MPs here in Plymouth. You made the decision to bomb yet more people, and let's see when the papers pick up. So page after page of stories about airstrikes. And here we are, we're led to believe that these people are so stupid that they're going to label their positions with big flags so that aircraft can come in and bomb them. And the Mail, this is quite extraordinary what we're reading here. You can see picture after picture. But what Louise was pointing out was that something very strange has gone on, which you find buried in the Mail story. So Turkey has demanded the US carry out military action against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, a condition for further Turkish support in fighting against Islamic State militants. So here's the skew back, we've got to take out Assad. But then, oh dear, it gets mucky because it says that Turkey's been reluctant to assist Syrian Kurdish fighters battling against ISIS because they are affiliated with the banned Kurdistan Workers' Party, a group recently described as the same as ISIS by Turkish President Erdogan. So we've got a bit of a problem here because we've got people that are supporting, well, they are Turkish, but apparently they are supporting ISIS as well. So Turkey is against ISIS, apart from the people within Turkey that are also ISIS. It's a bit confusing. And then it says Turkey has also been accused of doing deals with ISIS, agreeing to allow up to 180 detained militants, including British-born jihadists, to rejoin the group in return for the release of Turkish people. So dirty deals going on, the skew to let's get Assad, and then where are these ISIS people coming from? 1 minute they are Kurdistan Workers' Party, the next minute they're part of Syria, then they've come leaping out of Iraq. You couldn't make it up. No. But you don't have to make this up, because we are going to keep asking the questions of what Conservative MP Brooks Newmark did back in 19th of August 2013, when he states he met General Idris, the leader of the Syrian Free Army, and he told him that airstrikes and missiles will soon be coming down on Assad. But this is the bit we were very interested in. He said that the Free Syrian Army were linked to 7,500 Jabhat al-Nusra fighters, which were themselves linked with al-Qaeda. So we have a Conservative minister having meetings with the Syria Free Army linked to al-Nusra and therefore linked to al-Qaeda. Well, the Independent has been running a timeline on all this, and it's very big on pictures, it's very poor on quality of information and sources. But we couldn't help picking up on this part of the timeline, 2013, and it basically says Baghdadi renames ISI as the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS as the group absorbs Syrian al-Nusra. So here, according to the Independent, we are seeing that Brooks Newmark's al-Nusra has now actually been pulled across into ISIS. But wasn't he the person that was meeting with the Syrian Free Army connected with them?
I do believe so.
It's very confusing. And then, of course, we say that we see here that bin Laden's successor, Mr. Zawahiri, he was concerned about ISIS expansion orders, and he said that ISIS should be dissolved. So we've got Al-Qaeda saying, no, we don't want these people fighting, we're going to dissolve them. And that ISI should confirm itself to Iraq. But apparently this order was rejected. So the minimum you can say is it's a mess. But where has the mess come from? Well, it would appear to come from the fact that Britain and America took the lead to destroy Iraq on the lie of weapons of mass destruction.
It's supposed to be confusing, though, isn't it? That's the whole point of it.
Perpetual war, so that we don't see what's going on at home. And let's bring it back home, because we'll remind viewers of the Mirror article, which said that more than 60 suspected extremists have been locked up on return to the UK. They've been fighting for the Islamic State. Avon and Somerset police, though, have been hot on the trail of a 15-year-old student who's attempting to go to Syria.
They haven't found it yet, then, no?
Well, story's gone cold on this, but here we are. The joke, I think, was that the flag wasn't in UK, but these people fighting, they're so silly, we're told, that they're going to mark all their positions with black flags so that...
And they're going to walk down the middle of a highway. Yeah.
Public isn't stupid, and we did like this one. We believe this is correct. This is a little tweet from David Cameron, and he's sending his very best wishes to Muslims in Britain and around the world, celebrating Eid. And he says, Eid Mubarak to you and your families. Well, this was picked up by a very astute gentleman who said, David, there's a better way of doing this. And this was the suggestion. David Cameron, you could have saved time by just writing your message on the side of your bombs.
Yeah, you know who Frankie Boyle is, don't you?
I'm going to show my ignorance.
No, he's a comedian, very outspoken.
Well, he gets my vote because, that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
David Cameron, yes, we love you all, and we're going to write the message of love on the side of our bombs.
Yep.
David Cameron's going to look after us in hospital, though.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Rob Webster, who is Chief Executive of NHS Confederation, has spoken out about the financial crisis within the NHS. He says if the NHS cannot afford to fund everything, then it will need to make tough choices about what it does fund. He then gave a hint about patients being asked to cover their bed and board. Plans have not as yet been drawn up, but it is being suggested that the costs would mean means tested, and the charges could be set at around £75 per night.
That's pretty reasonable for somebody earning £150 a week. That's quite reasonable, isn't it? You can have a...
As well as your electricity bills and everything else.
Just have a day, you probably need 3 weeks in the hospital, but you can afford a day a week. Book yourself in.
Yeah, okay.
Well done, David Cameron.
Yeah. Smart meters. Okay, so consumer group Which has asked the government to look into a centralised procurement of smart meters as suppliers have their own buying plans laid out. Energy firms at the moment are required to take reasonable steps to install meters into every single home by 2020. They ain't getting in my home. But according to Which, a lack of guidance as to what it is meant by this, by causing uncertainty amongst suppliers and concerns that our costs are going to start spiralling out of control. The smart meter agenda is estimated at approximately £10.9 billion, and the government have estimated that households would only save approximately 2%. So this is, again, another load of waste of money and more ability to be snooping as into what we're buying, with our fridges talking to our mobile phones. Our mobile phones are then being hacked by the NCA. So Sainsbury's won't be delivering the shopping on time, or you're going to get somebody else's order. It's just a mess. Go to stopsmartmeters.co.uk. Yes, we can see it, but sadly many of the public can't. And they're buying into it. Well, so we need to get out there and wake more people up, and more people need to be watching the UK column.
I'm not sure which, I think it was one of the electricity companies, but they're sending around promotional material, and when the envelope comes through your door, it says, join the hive.
Really?
It's actually there. I didn't pick it up when I left home.
You should have done. Bring it in tomorrow.
I will bring it in. So there we are. They're telling you what they're building.
Yeah.
The hive and the hive mind. But India is showing
India.
some guts.
Exactly. Christina England here, article, well done, Christina. But she's picked up from Health Impact News, and they are reporting that the Gates Foundation is facing a pending lawsuit after investigation by courts in India. The Gates Foundation and World Health Authority and PATH are being accused of criminally negligent trialling vaccines on the vulnerable, uneducated and underinformed population. Students and parents were not provided or informed or given any consent forms or advised about possible dangers and adverse effects of these vaccines and trials that are going on over there. So,
including deaths.
Exactly. So
deaths,
hopefully India will follow through on this and do something about it and kick the Gates Foundation out of India.
So presumably the legal system in India has still got some substance to it. Well done.
Okay, right, McCann's touchy subject this. Madeleine McCann Troll tweeted 4,220 times about the missing schoolgirl and her family, apparently in 1 year. The 63-year-old lady called Brenda Leyland was found dead in her hotel room after Sky News reporters doorstepped her over alleged internet trolling of the McCanns. In this Mirror article, they are claiming that Miss Leyland took her own life after allegedly tweeting that many times about the McCanns' involvement into the death of their daughter. She was found at the Marriott Hotel in Leicester on Saturday after Sky News journalists doorstepped her over the trolling. Now, the minute I saw that it's now been passed that she did take her own life, the first thing I thought was that Jacintha, the nurse, who suddenly took her own life after answering the phone. But I had a look at Sky. Well, I didn't actually. It was John who sent me the Sky News guidelines. Thank you for that. If you can put these up. Here are the Sky News editorial guidelines, and they're on page 12 of this document in section 4. We cannot and should not breach anyone's privacy without an exceptional good reason. Any proposal to do so must be authorised in advance by the head of news gathering, the executive editor and our legal team. Any invasion of privacy, such as a secret recording or doorstepping, must be warranted, usually by demonstrating that the amount of public good that will be delivered by broadcast and or publication of the story will outweigh the intrusion. So those are the guidelines that Sky should have adhered to.
But this lady was also reporting, according to an excerpt of her tweets that's been coming around on the internet, she was saying that she was being approached by men in suits, and that she was going to expose the fact that she had these individuals that she clearly found intimidating. She was actually going to talk about these individuals so that people knew what was happening to her. Now, if that is true, what's the next thing that happens? The next thing is she's frightened of these people, but she's found dead.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's
suicide,
frightening.
Effectively.
Apparently. If Chris Bivvy can't come on our Thursday with Danielle and I, Stephen Birch is agreed to come on and talk about his finding. He's a South African businessman who was fascinated by the McCann case, went over, got onto the Murat's property with a sort of electronic X-ray scanning device and believes that Madeleine McCann is buried under the Murat's house. That's what he believes, and he has agreed to come on the show. So if he doesn't come on this Thursday, if Chris Bivvy doesn't come on this Thursday, he'll be on. If not, Stephen Birch will be on our show next week.
Right,
interesting.
Okay. We'll see what happens. Well, what do we do about all of this? The key thing is exposure of what's happening. And it's also understanding how things are being done. One of the key areas that UK Column has been reporting for many years is essentially the use of applied behavioural psychology. We don't have to make this up. The British government boasting that its so-called nudge unit has been so effective, the technology is being used as being sold overseas to Australia and America. So our own government using applied behavioural psychology, and in the government's own document, Mindspace, they say we will have our views and values changed and we will not realise that change has occurred. So this is absolute abuse by our own government, and this type of technology is now flowing through the public sector, the National School of Government. It's going through the National College of Policing. We're seeing the NHS drenched in it, and education. Is it any wonder that we're now starting to see the rise of aggressive bullying relationships within organisations, very aggressive management structures, politicians, amongst others, simply prepared to lie to carry out what's going out. So if we can see this stuff for what it is, we can deal with it. And we're going to encourage you to come along to the British Constitution Group conference weekend of the 1st of November at the Ramada Birmingham Sutton Coldfield Hotel, where we are going to be covering the state of the nation, but most importantly, what is being done to undermine the Constitution and common law, and of course, understanding that, see how we can start to turn things round. Do we believe we can turn things around? We absolutely believe that, but we simply require many, many more people to be out there active. And we've seen the wonderful letters people are getting from their MPs. Send a letter to your MP, stay on their backs, they don't like it. And this is a powerful tool,
Definitely.
particularly if we had millions of people doing it. And at the same time, we're going to look after ourselves. We can see the NHS being collapsed in front of our eyes. Don't despair, because it's quite apparent there are other ways of looking after your health and physical welfare.
Yes.
And people are talking about all sorts of cures and palliative systems if you've got trouble with your health.
And Dr. Graham Dowing is just incredible. We saw him at AV and is just a very, very good speaker, incredibly intelligent, really knows what he's talking about. So that's on the Sunday.
So there we are. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of today's programme. Thank you very much for... I used the word programme there. I shouldn't have, because they'll all be suspicious now.
Apparently the hotel's full.
The hotel's full?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the event. So there are other places down the road, apparently. So
we'll see what happens.
Thank you for that update, Fraggle.
Thanks for joining us. Do think of Melanie Shaw stuck in a prison cell. Think of what that means. Have a look for Mickey Summers' Facebook, yet another abuse victim trying out there for justice. And let's start asking the questions about why Britain's senior police officers believe that politicians and members of the establishment are above the law when it comes to child abuse. See you tomorrow, same time.
Bye. Bye-bye.